Captain Elias Crane had always thought of himself as an ordinary soldier. He followed orders, kept his boots polished, and carried his duties with quiet focus. Yet when the violent storms of Tiara began rolling across the alien plains that evening, something in him whispered that his life was about to change. The sky above the outpost was a field of black and silver clouds. Lightning split the air every few seconds, painting the alien horizon in sharp, jagged light. Terra was infamous for its storms. They were not ordinary storms of wind and rain, but tempests of energy, filled with surging plasma arcs that danced from mountain to mountain. The ground itself trembled whenever the bolts struck the crystal ridges that rose from the soil like jagged teeth. Most soldiers took shelter inside the reinforced barracks when such storms came, but Elias preferred the edge of the observation platform. He found beauty in the chaos, the way the crystals shimmered under the lightning, the roar of the sky that drowned out all thoughts, the hum of alien power. It was terrifying, but also breathtaking. That night, as he stood under the shelter of the reinforced canopy, he heard something that did not belong to the storm. It was faint at first, a cry. Not the howl of the wind, not the grind of rock, but a high-pitched voice, fearful, panicked, and desperate. Elias froze. His instincts sharpened immediately. He pressed his ear against the comm piece in his helmet, but no alarm had been raised. No soldier was missing. This voice, it sounded young. He gripped the railing, eyes scanning the storm-lit valley below. The flashes of lightning revealed broken crystal formations scattered across the plain, and then in one brief second of brightness he saw it. A small figure trapped near a collapsed cluster of crystals. The figure struggled, hands too small to move the heavy shards. It was a child. Elias did not think. He acted. He raced down the platform stairs, ignoring the warnings of the guards stationed below. "Crane, are you crazy? The storm will tear you apart," one shouted after him. But Elias was already pulling on his reinforced jacket, tightening the straps around his arms. "Someone's out there," he yelled back. His voice was lost under the thunder, but his determination was clear in his stride. The moment he stepped beyond the protective shield of the outpost, the storm hit him like a wall. The wind howled, tearing at his clothes. Bolts of lightning struck so close that his visor flashed warnings in red. The ground shook with each impact, and the crystals sang with a piercing hum. Yet he pressed forward one step at a time, boots sinking into the wet ground. Through the flickering flashes, he kept his eyes locked on the small figure ahead. The child was pinned beneath a jagged shard of crystal, their arm trapped. They cried out again, voice thin and trembling. Elias's heart tightened. He reached the child and immediately dropped to his knees. The figure was small, with pale blue skin that glowed faintly under the stormlight. Their eyes, large and silver, were wide with fear. Elias recognized the species at once, Zayari, the alien race that ruled this region of space, and this child. He could tell from the richness of the clothing, even torn and dirtied, that they were not ordinary. But it did not matter who the child was. They were in danger. That was enough. "I've got you," Elias said firmly, though the child likely did not understand his words. His tone, however, carried calm assurance. The crystal shard pinning the child's arm was heavy, its edges glowing faintly with static energy. Elias braced his legs, dug his hands under the edge, and heaved with all his strength. His muscles screamed and sparks snapped around his gloves. The shard shifted an inch, then another, but the storm chose that moment to unleash a bolt nearby. The shockwave knocked him sideways, forcing him to roll over the ground. The child whimpered, their free hand reaching out weakly. Elias coughed, spat dirt from his mouth, and pushed himself up. His vision blurred from the flash, but his will remained steady. He would not leave the child to die here. Again he set his hands against the shard, leaning every ounce of power into the lift. His breath came in ragged gasps. His back burned, but inch by inch the crystal lifted. The child pulled their arm free, crawling quickly toward him. Elias let the shard drop with a crash, nearly falling forward with the effort. He caught himself just in time and turned to the child. Their arm was bruised but not broken. Relief washed over him. Then another danger revealed itself. A second shard, loosened by the earlier quake, cracked above them. Elias looked up just in time to see the massive crystal splitting from the ridge, ready to crash down on both of them. There was no time to think. He grabbed the child, pulled them into his chest, and threw himself forward with all his strength. The shard slammed into the ground where they had been a heartbeat before, shattering into fragments that cut across his jacket and helmet. He shielded the child with his own body, ignoring the sting of the cuts. The child clung to him now, tiny fingers gripping his jacket tightly. Their silver eyes were filled with both fear and hope. "It's all right," Elias said again, voice steady despite his pounding heart. "I've got you." But the storm was not over. They still had to cross the open plain back to the outpost. Elias adjusted the child against his chest, wrapped his arm firmly around them, and began the long run through the storm. Each step was a battle. Lightning struck around them in furious bursts. The ground split with small quakes, forcing him to leap over cracks. His boots slipped on wet crystal dust, but he never loosened his hold on the child. His lungs burned, his muscles throbbed, yet he pressed forward. The shelter of the outpost grew closer with every stride. He could see soldiers rushing to the edge, waving, shouting, pointing the way, and finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, he stumbled through the shield barrier and collapsed to his knees inside the outpost walls. The storm's roar dulled. Behind the protective energy field, the soldiers rushed forward, their eyes wide as they saw what he carried. A Ziyari child. The alien boy clung to Elias, refusing to let go even as medics arrived. His small hand gripped Elias's sleeve tightly, as though convinced the human was the only safe thing in the storm. The soldiers exchanged stunned looks. Some muttered in disbelief. Others whispered that he must have just saved someone important. Elias, still catching his breath, only said one thing as the medics tried to pry the child away. "He's safe now. That's all that matters." The storm raged outside, but inside the outpost, silence hung heavy. None of them yet understood what Elias had done, or who exactly the child was. But soon the entire empire would know, and it would change everything. The outpost was never truly quiet after the storm. Soldiers moved about, carrying out repairs, checking the defense barriers, and writing reports. Yet even in the usual rush of duty, there was a change in the air. A whisper moved through the halls and courtyards like an invisible wind. The child was not ordinary. The human saved someone important. Captain Elias Crane heard none of it at first. He had spent the morning resting in the infirmary, where medics insisted on checking his bruises and cuts. His jacket was scorched from storm lightning, and his gloves had melted edges where the crystal sparks had burned through. But none of those injuries mattered to him. His mind was still on the boy. The child had refused to let go of him for hours after the rescue. Only after exhaustion overcame him did he finally allow himself to be taken into the care of the medics. Even then, he had clutched at Elias's sleeve until sleep forced his hand open. Elias had seen fear in many faces during his years of service, but the child's eyes, silver and wide, were burned into his memory. He had promised to protect him, and though the boy was now safe, Elias felt that promise was still alive inside him. By the next sunrise, the whispers turned into confirmed truth. The outpost commander called Elias to his office. "You saved the air," the commander said simply, his voice tight with awe and caution. That child was Prince Kale of the Ziyari royal line. Elias blinked, unsure he had heard correctly. "The prince?" "Yes, the only son of Queen Serenia herself." The commander leaned forward, his voice low. "Do you understand what this means? The queen will come here. She will want to see the man who risked his life in a storm to save her child." Elias shifted uncomfortably. He had never cared for titles or high honors. "I only did what anyone would have done." Perhaps, the commander said, but not everyone would have succeeded, and not everyone would have dared. The words did not sit well with Elias. He had no wish to be paraded in front of alien royalty, yet the commander's warning proved true sooner than expected. By midday, the sky above the outpost shimmered with the arrival of the Ziyari royal fleet. Their ships did not descend like the rough, blocky transports of humans. They glided like silver wings, each vessel carved with glowing lines that pulsed like veins of light. They carried an air of elegance and quiet power. Soldiers gathered along the landing platform as the largest ship, shaped like a crescent moon, came to rest. Its engines gave no roar, only a soft hum that vibrated in the bones of all who watched. The ramp lowered slowly, and a line of tall Ziyari guards appeared. They were clad in armor that shimmered like liquid crystal, spears of energy in their hands. Their presence commanded silence, and then she came. Queen Serenia of the Ziyari Empire was unlike any figure Elias had ever seen. She was tall, her bearing regal yet graceful. Her skin glowed faintly like polished pearl under the sunlight. Her eyes were the same silver as her son's, yet deeper, filled with centuries of wisdom and strength. A long robe of woven crystal threads shimmered around her, moving as though alive. Every soldier, human and alien alike, bowed or lowered their heads. The Queen's very presence seemed to bend the air. Elias stood at the back, uncertain. He had no training in alien protocol. He could only straighten his posture and wait. His heart beat harder than it had in the storm itself. The Queen's gaze swept across the platform. It was not cold nor dismissive. It was searching. And when her eyes found Elias, they did not pass over him. They lingered. She stepped forward, each movement slow and deliberate, until she stood before him. Her guards tensed, expecting her to command. Instead, she did something that stunned both humans and Ziyari alike. She bowed her head. It was a small gesture, but one filled with meaning. For Ziyari royalty, bowing was nearly unthinkable. It was a sign reserved only for the deepest gratitude. "You," she said, her voice clear and melodic, though touched with power. "You are the one who saved my son." Elias swallowed, unsure of how to respond. "Yes, Your Majesty. I only did what I could." "You did more than most would dare," she replied. Her gaze sharpened as though testing his spirit. "The storm that night was strong enough to crush a battalion. Yet you risked yourself for a child not your own, a child of another race. Why?" Elias thought for a moment, then gave the only answer that felt true. "Because he was in danger. No child should face death alone." A silence fell. The Queen studied him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. Around them, whispers rose among the soldiers and attendants. No one had expected such humility from a human soldier, nor such a response from the Queen. "Your courage will not be forgotten," Serenia said. "You have earned the gratitude of the Ziyari Empire, and my gratitude as a mother." The words echoed across the platform. Even the commander looked astonished. The Queen gestured to her guards, and they stepped aside. From within the ship, the small figure of Prince Kale appeared. He ran forward the moment he saw Elias, his silver eyes bright with recognition. "Guardian," the boy cried in his own language, though the meaning was clear. He rushed into Elias's arms without hesitation. The crowd gasped again. For the prince to show such affection toward a human was unheard of. But Elias only knelt, steadying the boy gently. "You're safe now," he said quietly. The Queen's gaze softened at the sight. For the first time, her regal mask cracked to reveal a mother's heart. She placed a hand over her chest, her voice carrying both pride and something unspoken. "Captain Elias Crane," she declared for all to hear, "from this day, you are recognized by my throne as a protector of the royal line." The words struck the gathering like thunder. Soldiers exchanged shocked looks. Advisors muttered. Some Ziyari nobles frowned, clearly unsettled. Elias, however, only felt uneasy. He had not asked for this. Recognition meant politics, attention, and responsibilities he had never sought. Yet when he looked at the boy in his arms, clinging so tightly, he understood why the Queen had said it. This was not about honors. It was about trust. The Queen turned to her advisors, who were already whispering their protests. "Summon the court. I will present him properly." Elias felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. He was not sure if it was pride or trouble that awaited him. Perhaps both. That evening, as the Queen's ship departed with her entourage, the outpost buzzed with talk. Some soldiers spoke of glory, others of danger. But one truth rang clear in every voice. The relationship between humans and the Ziyari had changed in a single day, and at the center of it stood one man who had simply chosen to save a child. Elias sat alone in his quarters after it all, staring at the storm clouds gathering once more beyond the horizon. He had faced lightning and crystal shards without fear. But now he faced something far greater, the eyes of an empire, and the unknown path it would demand of him. He did not yet know how deep the Queen's gratitude would reach. He did not yet know the jealous eyes that already watched him. All he knew was this: he would not abandon the boy, no matter what came, and that promise would soon draw him into the very heart of a world he had never imagined. The journey to the Ziyari capital was unlike anything Captain Elias Crane had ever experienced. The Queen's crescent-shaped flagship glided through the void in complete silence, its silver hull glowing faintly as though alive. Inside, the corridors curved smoothly like the insides of crystal caverns. Walls shifted in subtle colors, pulsing softly with energy, as though the ship itself breathed. Elias walked those halls uneasily. He was used to human vessels, metal floors, harsh lights, the endless hum of engines. Here everything was elegant, almost alive. Every soldier or attendant he passed carried themselves with a grace that reminded him he was far from home. And yet, the small figure that clung to his hand grounded him. Prince Kale refused to leave his side since the storm. The boy followed him everywhere, eyes bright, his trust absolute. The child's laughter occasionally echoed through the corridors, drawing stares from the alien attendants. For many of them, seeing the young heir so openly attached to a human was unsettling. Some frowned. Some whispered. Others walked away in silence. Elias could feel the weight of every stare. Still, he did not let go of the boy's hand. When they arrived at the capital, Elias felt his breath catch. The city of Zayara was a marvel. Towers of crystal and stone rising high into the clouds, glowing rivers of energy flowing between them. Bridges of light connected the spires, where thousands of Zayari walked with calm dignity. Above, protective shields shimmered like faint auroras reflecting the alien sun. The palace itself was the crown of it all, built into the side of a mountain whose face shone like a diamond. Its halls stretched outward in vast wings, each carved from luminous crystal. It seemed less like a structure and more like a living monument. As the Queen's procession entered, nobles and guards lined the halls, their eyes falling upon the unusual sight, a human soldier walking beside their prince. Elias felt the air grow heavier with every step. He could almost hear their thoughts. Why is he here? What place does a human have beside royalty? The Queen led the way, tall and calm, her presence silencing any spoken challenge. Yet the whispers followed Elias like shadows. Later, inside the grand chamber, the Queen gathered her court. The nobles filled the room, each dressed in shimmering robes that reflected light like water. Their silver eyes studied Elias with mixed emotions, curiosity, suspicion, even disdain. Queen Serenia raised her hand, commanding silence. "This is Captain Elias Crane," she declared, her voice steady and strong. "He saved my son's life during the storm of Tayara. For his courage, he has earned my recognition. From this day, he will remain under my protection and under my trust." The words carried across the chamber like thunder. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. Some bowed in reluctant acceptance. Others exchanged sharp looks. Finally, one stepped forward. He was tall with angular features sharper than most. His robe was lined with black crystal, a mark of high status. Elias guessed this was a man of influence. "Your Majesty," the noble said, his tone polite yet edged. "We all honor the safety of the young prince, but must we honor a human for this? Their kind are reckless. They act without thought, without respect for our traditions." His silver eyes flicked to Elias, filled with quiet disdain. "How can we place our future in the hands of one so undisciplined?" The chamber murmured in agreement. Several nobles nodded. Others folded their arms. Elias stood silently. He was a soldier, not a politician. He had no words for these people. He had acted on instinct, nothing more. He had not asked for recognition nor for this role. But then a small voice broke through the tension. "Guardian!" Prince Kale ran into the chamber, slipping past the guards. He rushed to Elias, hugging his leg with a laugh. "Guardian!" The room fell silent. The nobles' eyes widened. Some looked horrified. Others whispered furiously. The Queen's lips curved into the faintest smile. "My son has spoken. He has chosen his own protector." The noble in black crystal looked displeased but dared not argue further in public. He bowed stiffly and stepped back. In the days that followed, Elias remained within the palace as a guest. Or perhaps as a test. He was given chambers carved from crystal, their walls glowing faintly in patterns that responded to his presence. Servants brought food that shimmered like liquid light, though Elias admitted he preferred the plain rations of his own people. But wherever he went, the prince followed. Kale's curiosity was endless. He wanted to know everything about humans, about their ships, their weapons, their games. Elias taught him simple tricks: how to tie a knot with rope, how to balance a stone on one finger, how to whistle. Kale laughed each time, trying and failing, then trying again. The boy's joy spread quickly. Even some palace attendants who once frowned began to smile at the sound. But not everyone was moved. More than once, Elias caught the sharp glances of nobles as he passed. He overheard whispers in the hallways. "The Queen trusts him too much. It is dangerous for a human to be so close. What if this changes everything?" The words troubled him. He had no wish to stir conflict between species. He had only saved a child, but now that act had created a bond stronger than any order could break. One evening, the Queen called Elias to her private chamber. She stood at the balcony, overlooking the glowing city. Her robe shimmered in the light of the alien moon. For a long moment she said nothing, only watched the horizon. "You have noticed the whispers," she finally said. Elias nodded. "They don't trust me. I can feel it. They fear change," Serenia replied calmly. "For generations my people have looked at yours with distance. They see humans as wild, brave, but without control. To them you are dangerous." Elias crossed his arms. "And to you?" The Queen turned, her silver eyes steady. "To me, you are the man who saved my son when none of my guards were there. You risked your life without promise of reward. That alone carries weight in my eyes." Elias shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do it for reward, I just couldn't leave him." Her gaze softened. "That is what makes you different, and that is why they fear you. Because you remind them that sometimes honor is not found in law or bloodline, but in choice." The words lingered with him long after he left the chamber. The rift between worlds was growing clearer. Among the humans stationed nearby, word of his recognition spread as well. Some celebrated, proud that one of their own had gained such honor. Others worried. They feared it might create tension, that the Zyari nobles would strike back. And among the Zyari, the divide deepened. Some, especially the younger generation, admired Elias's courage. They spoke of humans with new respect. But the older nobles grumbled in their halls, plotting quietly, their silver eyes filled with distrust. Elias felt the weight of it pressing on him from both sides. He was not just a soldier anymore. He was a symbol. And symbols had a way of sparking conflict, but whenever doubt filled him, he thought of Kale's laughter, the boy's small hand gripping his own. And he knew one thing with certainty. He would not break that bond, no matter what storms awaited him now. The palace of Zayara was never truly silent. Its crystal walls carried every sound, the soft steps of attendants, the faint hum of energy flowing through its veins, even the distant voices of nobles whispering in shadowed corridors. Captain Elias Crane had grown used to the beauty of the place, but not the weight of its eyes. Everywhere he walked, someone watched him. Guards studied him with suspicion. Nobles frowned when he passed, and attendants whispered when they thought he could not hear. Some looked at him with curiosity, a few with respect, but many with open distrust. Only two faces gave him peace, the wide-eyed joy of Prince Kyle and the calm silver gaze of Queen Serenia. Still, Elias was a soldier. He could feel the tension, building like the air before a storm. That tension came to light on the day of the ceremony of renewal. It was a grand event held once, every cycle, to honor the Empire's ancestors and affirm loyalty to the throne. Nobles from across the capital gathered in the Great Hall, where towering crystal pillars rose like frozen lightning. At the center stood a glowing platform, alive with shifting lights. Elias had been invited to stand near the Queen's dais. Though uncomfortable in the fine garments they had given him, a dark robe lined with silver thread, he accepted. He understood that his presence was part of the Queen's intent. She wanted her people to see him, to know the human who had saved her son. Prince Kale stood proudly at his mother's side, his small hand reaching now and then to tug Elias's sleeve as if to make sure he was still there. The boy's trust warmed Elias, even as dozens of noble eyes burned holes in his back. The ceremony began with chants, the sound of crystal chimes, and the hum of energy rising through the pillars. The nobles bowed as the Queen lifted her hands, her voice steady as she called upon tradition. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to believe it would pass without trouble, but then the storm came. It began as a flicker, a single shadow moving among the crowd where no guard should be. Elias's instincts sharpened instantly. His soldier's mind caught details the nobles missed, the unnatural stillness of three figures slipping through the hall, their hands hidden beneath their cloaks. He did not hesitate. "Down!" he shouted. His voice echoed like thunder, breaking the sacred silence. The Queen's guards reacted a heartbeat too late. The cloaked figures lunged forward, pulling weapons that shimmered with crackling energy. Their target was clear, not Elias, not the Queen, but Prince Kale. The boy froze, silver eyes wide with fear. Elias moved before thought could stop him. He crossed the space with a soldier's speed, throwing himself between the assassins and the prince. One blade struck his arm, slicing through the robe, but he ignored the pain. With his other hand, he seized the attacker's wrist and twisted hard, sending the weapon clattering to the floor. "Stay behind me," Elias barked, pushing Kale gently toward the queen. The hall erupted in chaos. Nobles screamed, guards surged forward, and crystal pillars rang with the clash of weapons. The second assassin swung at Elias, the blade humming with energy. Elias ducked, rolled forward, and slammed his shoulder into the figure's chest. The assassin stumbled back, surprised by the sheer force. Elias snatched the fallen weapon from the floor and held it steady, his stance firm. He was outnumbered, but he had faced worse before. The third assassin bypassed him, charging directly for the prince. Elias saw it too late until instinct drove him again. He hurled the weapon like a spear. It struck the assassin's shoulder, spinning them sideways just as they reached the dais. The queen herself stepped forward then, her hand raised. A blast of silver energy erupted from her palm, sending the attacker crashing into the crystal wall. The sound of shattering echoed like thunder. By the time the guards secured the hall, 2 assassins lay unconscious and the third groaned weakly against the wall. Elias stood breathing heavily, his arm bleeding, his robe torn, but his eyes sharp and alert. The boy clung to him again, hiding his face in Elias's side. The nobles watched in stunned silence. When the danger had passed, the queen stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the hall. Her voice was like steel. "Let it be known," she declared, "that it was this human who stood between death and my son once more." No one dared argue. The evidence was plain. The child still clung to Elias, alive and safe. Yet beneath the surface, the storm of politics raged hotter than ever. That night, Elias sat alone in his chamber, bandaging his arm. He had faced blades before, but the memory of Kale's frightened eyes weighed heavier than the wound. A knock came at his door. He looked up to see Queen Serenia enter, her guards remaining outside. "You should be resting," Elias said quietly. "So should you," she replied, her gaze falling to the bandage. For a moment, the stern ruler was gone, replaced by a mother who had nearly lost her child. "You saved him again," Elias shrugged. "I did what had to be done." She stepped closer, her silver eyes searching his face. "There are those among us who see you as a danger, Captain Crane. They whisper in the dark, fearing the bond you have formed with my son. Tonight they revealed themselves. You must understand. They will not stop." Elias nodded slowly. He had known it from the start. "Then I'll just have to be ready. As long as they come for him, they'll have to go through me." The queen studied him for a long moment, then placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. Few in this galaxy would speak those words with such certainty. Fewer still would act on them. Her hand lingered, then fell back to her side. "You are more than a soldier now, Elias. You have become part of something greater than you realize." He said nothing, but the truth of her words settled in his chest like iron. In the days that followed, investigations revealed fragments of truth. The assassins were Zayari, not outsiders. They belonged to a faction of nobles who opposed the queen's decision to honor a human. Their goal had been simple: remove the prince, frame the chaos on humans, and turn the court against both Elias and Serenia. The revelation shook the palace. Nobles argued in endless debates. Some demanded punishment for the traitors. Others insisted that Elias's presence had invited the attack in the first place. But among the people, among the guards, the attendants, even the young nobles who had watched that day, the story spread differently. They spoke of the human who shielded the prince with his own body, who fought fearlessly against assassins without hesitation. The whispers began to change. Not all saw him as a danger anymore. Some began to see him as a protector worthy of respect. One evening, Elias sat in the garden of the palace. The air was calm, the crystal flowers glowing faintly in the moonlight. Kale sat beside him, trying once more to whistle as Elias had shown him. Each attempt came out as a weak puff of air, followed by laughter. "You'll get it," Elias said with a small smile. The boy tried again, then leaned against him with a yawn. From the shadows, Queen Serenia approached quietly. She watched the scene with eyes softer than the court ever saw. "You have given him more than safety," she said at last. "You have given him joy, trust, These are gifts no guard or noble has given him before. Elias looked up, meeting her gaze. He wanted to speak, but no words seemed enough. The Queen stepped closer, her voice lowering. And for that, Captain Crane, you have given me something as well. You have given me hope. The garden fell into silence, the storm of politics forgotten for a moment. Only the glow of crystal flowers and the quiet bond of trust remained. But beyond those walls, shadows still moved. The failed attack had not ended the danger. It had only begun to show how deep the betrayal ran. Elias knew another storm was coming, and he would be ready. The palace of Ziara had never been more alive. Word of Captain Elias Crane's bravery had spread like fire, reaching every corner of the empire. The halls shimmered with whispers, some filled with admiration, others with doubt, but all spoke of one truth. The human had proven himself unlike any other. Elias moved quietly through the corridors, his thoughts heavy with the events of the past weeks. He had faced storms, danger, and betrayal, yet none of it compared to the weight of the choices now before him. Prince Kale walked beside him, chattering excitedly about the lessons Elias had taught him, the tricks with ropes, balancing stones, and the small games of human childhood. The boy's laughter filled the hall, bright and unrestrained, cutting through the tension that had built between human and Ziyari alike. Yet Elias knew the whispers still followed him. The nobles who had opposed him earlier watched every move. They had not forgotten. Some hoped to find a reason to challenge him, to undo the trust he had earned from the Queen. But the Queen herself, serene and unyielding, had a plan that would leave no doubt in anyone's mind. It was announced that a grand assembly would be held, the first of its kind in generations. Every noble, advisor, and envoy from across the empire would attend. The purpose, Queen Serenia said, was to celebrate the survival of the young prince and reaffirm the unity of the Ziyari people. Elias had been instructed to attend, but he feared the scrutiny he would face. His life until now had been guided by duty, not recognition. Yet the Queen insisted. Your courage must be seen, she told him, not just by my son or by me, but by all who watch. The morning of the assembly arrived with clear skies, a rare calm for Ziara. The city's towers glowed in the sunlight, their crystal surfaces casting prismatic patterns across the streets. Citizens lined the avenues, curious to see the human who had become part of the royal story. Inside the grand hall, the atmosphere was charged. Crystal pillars rose like stalagmites, energy flowing along their surfaces in brilliant lines of silver and gold. Nobles whispered in groups, their eyes darting toward the dais where the Queen would speak. Elias felt the tension like static on his skin. Prince Kale tugged at his sleeve. Guardian, will they like you? He asked quietly. Elias knelt slightly to meet the boy's eyes. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to protect you. The boy smiled, satisfied with the answer, and took his place beside the Queen. The doors opened and the assembly began. The Queen stepped forward, her silver eyes scanning the crowd. Every noble and envoy fell silent. This was not merely ceremony. This was a declaration. My people, she said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the vast hall. Today, we honor not only the survival of my son, but the courage that made it possible. She gestured to Elias, standing tall beside the dais, his robe still marked with minor scars from the storm and the recent attack. This human, she continued, Captain Elias Crane, risked his life to protect the heir of the Ziyari Empire. Without hesitation, without fear, he placed himself in harm's way to ensure the safety of another life. Gasps rippled through the hall. Some nobles whispered furiously while others nodded, impressed by the Queen's words. The boy, Prince Kale, ran forward and wrapped his arms around Elias's leg. Guardian, he shouted joyfully. The Queen allowed a faint smile. Let it be known, she said, her voice rising, that his actions demonstrate qualities we value above all: honor, courage, and loyalty. No matter their origin, these virtues are worthy of recognition. The chamber was silent. Every eye focused on Elias. He felt the weight of centuries of tradition and expectation pressing down on him. Yet he remained steadfast. Then, in a gesture that shocked everyone, Queen Serenia stepped forward from the dais. She walked directly to Elias, her movements deliberate and measured. The crowd held its breath. For generations, humans have been seen as distant, reckless, and unpredictable, she said, her silver eyes locking onto his. "Yet here stands one who has proven that our fears can be wrong, and that honor knows no species. Captain Crane, by my decree." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "You are not only recognized for your courage, you are accepted by my family and by my throne, as a guardian of this empire and protector of my son." The chamber erupted with murmurs. Nobles who had opposed him earlier fell silent, unable to argue against such a declaration. Others bowed deeply, some even kneeling in respect for the human who had dared to act with such bravery. Elias's mind raced. He had never sought titles, recognition, or power. He had only acted out of instinct, out of duty to protect life. Yet now, the choice of the Queen had elevated him in a way he could never have imagined. Prince Kale laughed again, tugging Elias's sleeve. "Guardian, they all like you." Elias knelt, ruffling the boy's hair. "I'm glad someone does." The Queen's gaze softened, her voice lowering for the child's ears alone. "You have earned more than respect, Captain Crane. You have earned trust, loyalty, and a place where few outsiders have ever stood." The rest of the assembly passed in a blur. Elias answered questions, observed the people of the Empire, and saw firsthand how his actions had changed perspectives. Children looked at him with awe. Guards nodded respectfully as he passed. Even older nobles, though reluctant, could not ignore the bravery he had displayed. By the time the ceremony ended, the message was clear. Elias Crane was no longer merely a human soldier from another world. He was a symbol, a bridge between species, a living proof that courage and honor could transcend boundaries. After the assembly, the Queen led him to a private balcony overlooking the city. The sun was low, casting long golden reflections across the crystal towers. "You have done more than save my son," she said quietly. "You have given me hope that trust can grow between our peoples. And you have reminded us all that courage is a language everyone understands." Elias remained silent, watching the city below. He thought of the storm, the attack, and the boy who had clung to him through it all. He had never expected recognition or gratitude, but now he understood the impact of one act of bravery. "Your Majesty," he said finally, "I only did what any soldier should. I never thought it would lead to this." The Queen placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes the smallest actions echo across generations. You have changed not only the life of my son, but the future of my empire. That is no small thing." Elias looked at her, the words settling deep in his chest. He had always acted out of instinct, out of duty, and now that instinct had reshaped the course of an entire civilization. In the following days, life in the palace returned to its usual rhythm, but the bond between human and Ziyari had become undeniable. Prince Kale refused to leave Elias's side, and the Queen often sought his counsel, not because of politics, but because she respected his courage and judgment. Some nobles still whispered, plotting quietly. They would not forget the human who had risen above their expectations. But for now, their voices were drowned out by admiration, gratitude, and the undeniable truth that Captain Elias Crane had proven the worth of his kind. One afternoon, as Elias walked with the boy through the palace gardens, Kale looked up at him with a grin. "Guardian, will you always stay with me?" Elias smiled, feeling a warmth he had never known in battle or in storms. "As long as you need me, yes, always." The boy laughed and ran ahead, the crystal petals of the garden shimmering with every step. From the palace balcony, the Queen watched them. Her silver eyes glimmered not with worry, but with hope. "He has earned more than I could ever have imagined," she whispered. And indeed, Elias Crane had done more than save a life. He had built trust, courage, and a bridge between worlds. A bridge that would carry the hopes of humans and Ziyari alike into a future shaped by understanding. Bravery and honor. The galaxy was wide, and dangers still awaited. But for now, one man had changed everything. The Queen's final words to him, spoken quietly but firmly, would remain in his memory forever. "He fearlessly saved my child, and now I step forward for him." And with that, Elias knew his life and the life of the young prince had been forever entwined with the destiny of an entire empire.